Greetings and welcome to ZM Global episode 132. My name is Ben McLeish. This week we delve into the decidedly modern battle of man versus machine. Joining the show in a moment is Sam Vallely, who is behind the production of a feature-length documentary called Will Work for Free, which is available on YouTube. Sam and I sat down to discuss automation, the positives as well as the negative consequences of when our values collide with our technical abilities, and what it feels like to submit a film to the internet and await the comments. But first, some brief news. There's been a flurry of media appearances, interviews and events over the last couple of weeks. TZM Germany, a great group of activists and whose pronunciation of Zeitgeist is over 60% more accurate than the average TZM member, played host to Peter Joseph's latest talk, which was held in Berlin a few days ago. The piece, called Economic Calculation in a Resource-Based Economy, delved into the potential energy, water and agricultural possibilities which the human family could harness were able to move beyond the state of affairs in which we find ourselves right now. It was broadcast on the internet, and the event will also be uploaded to YouTube with the Q&A that went just after the event as well. So both of those will make an appearance just as soon as the editing is done and will be uploaded in the coming weeks. Peter then also visited London, where he had some of the UK lecture team hold a Q&A at the venue, which we've also already booked for the 2014 Zeitgeist Day London. It's called the Conway Hall in Red Lion Square in central London. And that will be the site of our many lectures and talks next March. The Q&A itself was some 2.5 hours. I would say there's probably about 100 people there. And it was very nice as well. A lot of recognizable faces in the crowds. And hence one could also tell the questions that came out were the kinds of questions that you arrive after you've been thinking about a particular train of thought for quite a while. Which was really good because we also had that recorded as well. And we will be uploading that as well in the coming weeks. Our thanks in advance to Jason Gleason, our man behind the camera, for capturing the audio and the video, and who is editing this frantically now as we speak in the background. Broadcasting also today, Wednesday, the 20th of November 2013. Goodness me, is that it already? Is that the whole year gone? Fantastic. Over at crealm.com today is my interview with KMO, our latest attempt at talking about various elements to do with sustainability and technology and the effects on human society. This time we sat down for actually 2 episodes, one of which is a Vault episode that sits in the subscriber section of KMO's website. But the free podcast will be out today as well, during which we do talk at length about the work and the lifestyle of Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, a man whose Unabomber's manifesto pointed out certain truths and certain difficulties with technology. Of course, this gentleman took it to horrifying ends, in that he felt he needed to gain the public's attention by, quote, killing people, something which he admitted he had to do purely to get attention. It's a very disturbed and very damaged human being, for reasons that are best left to the explanation on KMO's show. But we get some mileage out of that, and we get to muse a little bit about some of the points that KMO's prior guests have brought up as well. Oh, and finally, Peter was on Russia Today on Breaking the Set for an actual full 30-minute interview after several prior appearances in shorter interviews over the last couple of years, which allowed him enough time to go into some detail on the train of thought we attempt to explain in our movement, that honouring both the demands of nature's limitations for exploitation and taking full advantage of the technological, scientific and social advancements lit by the poor and consoling candle of reason, we can actually make actual, technically viable human society flourish, where until now obsession with materialism, money and truncated understanding of the environment have dwelt instead. So, to this week's subject, the future of work as seen through the prism of machine automation. Well, to prime this episode, I ask the question of the audience. You are to think of a job which is done today, which could not, in some sense, be automated, or whose existence could, entirely be abolished by the automation of other jobs, by machines, data collection tools, and artificial intelligence. What seems to be impossible to replace with a robot? A waitress? A lawyer? Sales staff? Perhaps doctors? What cannot be subjugated to the machines? Have you thought of any particular type of job? Is it by any chance the job you do now? A great tendency of people, and I include myself in this, are loath to ever admit that the positions of work that they hold within their society might just be pointless, or even worse than pointless, would qualify to be just about pointful, but could be automated either already or in the near future. Or maybe just the job simply becomes a redundant process as more and more previously separate jobs become subsumed into one single job, shrinking the number of heads but cramming a number of extra duties into the same position. Surely me, this special human being, surely my skills are irreplaceable. Well, we take this kind of stuff very seriously. Our work is a measure of our competence and suitability as human beings within our circles. This is how it has become social capital itself. It is regarded as being something that is absolutely required of every single individual, regardless of their abilities. It is our social status. It has become the culmination of our learning theory turned into practice. It is our bread and butter. There's just something about humanity itself that's irreplaceable by machines, we think. Or even if such a displacement were to take place, people would surely find something else to do. Isn't that what history has shown? Well, perhaps until recently. And yet, while humanity regards itself as a special being with infinite wants and skills and peculiar irrationalities that have plagued the sleepless nights of many an economist, we have seen only a very marginal increase in overall IQ in the last few generations. Tasks by humans are learned in a linear form when humans are doing the learning. Training, an almost synonymous word with jobs these days, requires time, effort, and the particular strangenesses of human concentration and attitude to be in line. New generations learn at a similar speed to preceding generations. In other words, humans don't upgrade like computers can. Spend 40 years refining a complex set of algorithms which can parse language into understood sentences and tie this together with vast data sets about mathematics, world history, and other facets of the world, and you have created what might loosely be called a form of artificial intelligence by which you can interrogate your phone. But once learned, a new machine is taught this all by download in 2 minutes, not another 40 years of acute training. We may put it like this. Machine skill is expanding much quicker than human skill. However, the human skill set, it is still in ascent. It is slow, but it is in ascent. But it will, due to the biology of our makeup, the very materials that make up our brain and allow our thoughts to be relayed at certain speeds, will ultimately be defeated by hardware from machines that simply works faster than our own biophysical makeup. There is an upper limit, and it's not very far off, where humans fall behind the machines in almost every element and every sector that there is. The following is my conversation, therefore, with Sam Vallely, filmmaker of Will Work for Free, which is now on YouTube, also for free, on the subject of automation, how it can improve our lives, and what realities we can look forward to in the face of its rapid encroachment on the human skill set. Welcome to TZM Global. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm going to introduce you to our audience, some of whom will know who you are already, or at least will know your work. You made a film quite recently, I think it was the end of October, called Will Work for Free. Let me describe what this film does. So the unique thing I saw about this film, which is just over 2 hours long, is you are examining, I think for the first time, as far as I've seen it, a full spectrum of the implications of technological unemployment. So you go very carefully, sector by sector, or rather the film goes very carefully, sector by sector through legal and litigation, although that's a very minor part, high street consumption, things like shopping for clothes, food, manufacturing, housing, larger industry, 3D printing, so the idea of fabricating your own complex and well-crafted goods at home, or at least on a case-by-case basis. And you build, again, I say, I think for the first time, a holistic view of what automation and mechanization will do to the job market in any situation over the coming years. That's what I think is quite original about this film. There are a few other films that have been made, some by members of the Zeitgeist Movement themselves. There was a guy called Dale Hallett. He still exists, in fact. He is called Dale Hallett, who made a film in 2011, I think it was, called I Lost My Job, which was a sort of 20, 30-minute treatment on the broad spectrum of technological unemployment. The idea that automated labor or machine labor is getting gradually better and better and more powerful and faster and more complex at displacing the abilities of a human being. Did I get that right?
Yeah, actually, to be honest, I don't know if I've seen that film. The one that I was aware of was oh, sorry, you got the description right about my film, yes. The one I was aware of that existed on the internet was Our Technical Reality, because it's a strange thing. It's very hard to find anything on technological unemployment. There's almost nothing in the mainstream media, and Our Technical Reality is a good film as well. But I think it works for if you've already had the conversation with someone about a resource-based economy and they are sort of hesitant as to whether or not we're technically there yet. Our Technical Reality is a good film, a good tool for approaching people with those concerns. So I think my film's slightly different though, in that it's almost approachable by anyone who, regardless of whether or not they've heard of a resource-based economy. It throws the problem at them, regardless of what political system they support.
Well, it certainly seemed to me like the film helps people who've never had to think about this stuff or had the chance to think about it, being brought in from entry level and being given every angle that they have. I don't know if you've had conversations with people about this in the making of your film or before that.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing I keep hearing from people is, oh, well, they'll never be able to automate my job. Have you come across that?
Absolutely. That's it's a strange thing that people can sort of see and appreciate the automation of jobs as long as it's not relevant to their job. If it is, then they can sort of come up with all sorts of reasons as to why it couldn't possibly happen to them.
Yeah, I had a gentleman of the conservative persuasion in England. For anybody who's not English, who's listening to this, or not British, the conservatives over here are essentially the pro-business, or the more obviously pro-business side of our government. I think the Americans would similarly think the Republicans to be in that. And this gentleman gave me a fantastic example of something that couldn't be automated. Fantastic because it betrays the biases rather than any actual truth of the matter. And he said, no, I work optimizing websites to maximize donations for the Marie Curie Cancer Center. And what that entailed was taking the statistics from where people are looking on the website, what colors were in play at the time, what structures and what frames were there, and where they ultimately navigated to, or whether they navigated to clicking on the donate button sooner or later. And then what they do is they change the website according to what they think might be heuristically the next more efficient way of taking donations. And as you can probably imagine from the research you've done, that is highly automatable. In fact, it's amazing that wasn't already automated and that has been considered a human skill, because all it is taking one data set and comparing it with another and producing a conclusion that you want or an effect that you want. So I have had that.
Yeah.
But I'll give you a story.
Sure.
Which I'm only. It happened almost 2 weeks ago. By the time this broadcast comes out, it will have been 2 weeks. I was involved in an almost fatal car crash last Monday. I was joining a
a dual carriageway, and I looked. It was dark. I looked right and I looked left. I didn't see anything. Joined the carriageway and then got hit at 70 miles an hour on the driver's side. Yeah, and the thing is, he was lucky enough. The gentleman was lucky enough to walk away absolutely unscathed, but his car had been decimated.
Wow.
His entire bonnet had vanished into the vehicle. My car was, of course, a complete write-off, and luckily he'd not hit me on the driver's side of my door, the door behind me. But as I was recovering afterwards in hospital, in fact, I even talked to the people in the ambulance about what it would mean if we did decide to do driverless cars, if we did imagine to roll out the technology of automated navigation, what that would mean for truck drivers, cab drivers, any sort of private limousine people, any sort of mining trucks like we see in your film as well. If we were to roll that out truly according to how we can do it rather than whether we want to do it, what would that then mean for the economy and all those displaced jobs? And if what could we do this anywhere else? So I think I laid a claim to being the first person to be in a neck brace strapped to a gurney talking about a resource-based economy inside an ambulance. So I think that's quite good. But in the following days, when gradually it creeped out to my friends that this had happened, because I decided not to talk about it while I was still sorting out insurance and all the rest of it. Was people said, isn't it amazing that those two cars did exactly the jobs they had to, which is they've been designed to crumple, they've been designed to have airbags. Both of my airbags went off, punching me in the face quite considerably. And the fact that the A-frame of the door didn't just buckle and let the car go right through mine. The fact that his bonnet collapsed so that he was absolutely fine, apart from I think a cut on the leg is all he had. And he walked out of the car, and knew who he was, and that we were essentially both almost, I would say, unscathed in any meaningful sense.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't it great that all that technology was put in place? All those wonderful engineers now really, I owe my life directly to those people.
Yeah.
But of course, you then have the follow-up conversation, which is if those cars had both been equipped with Doppler radar and any automated navigation that would improve the detection of other cars, it wouldn't have happened to begin with.
That's right.
So we are talking here, and I think your film talks about the actual resolution of the problem of jobs, if you like, and the problems of the safeguards that are required at the moment with manual laden technology. That's what I certainly got from it. But would you like to tell me how you came about to make this film? What made you do it?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of didn't really intentionally set out to make a film. It began with, I've been sort of an advocate of the Zeitgeist Movement for I think about 4 years, and so these conversations keep coming up, and of course, so I kind of do this weird thing where I sort of like to write everything down just for my own sort of frame of reference, and so I started building a Word document that just had everything I sort of knew about automation, just so that it was all sort of structured right and in one place, and so I was just doing this for my own personal sort of frame of reference, and naturally I sort of divided up into each sector of employment, and then I started getting interested in, well, how can I fill in all the areas that I don't know, so I ended up constructing this huge Word document, and then trying to shorten it down by having pictures instead of describing things. And then it occurred to me, well, pictures, they don't really do it justice. So if I was to make a video, just the video clips that were already out there that existed, and just maybe narrate over the top of it, maybe that would be better than the Word document, and possibly could show that project to other people. Then halfway through making that project, it sort of occurred to me, if I was to sort of put an introduction at the beginning and have some sort of conclusion at the end, then this could come together as a film. And so that's what it ended up being.
Did you imagine when you were putting this together that you would get 25,000 views for a 2-hour film?
No, not at all. Actually, it was a weird thing as well, because I've got my insecurities and all that stuff, and because I originally made this just for my own sort of personal project, I actually had it up on YouTube for about 4 hours before I decided to set it to public, and I was going back and forth as to whether or not I should sort of release it onto the world, kind of thing. And because I thought the production value, it's not great. It's essentially the whole thing is made by two people, and so I just had all these voices in the back of my head, all the negative comments about it, and I just, for some reason, I imagine people just completely disagreeing with it, completely hating it. So I was a little bit hesitant about even putting it live. Then when I did, it was just kind of, everyone seemed to like it. I was getting really nice comments, and everyone seemed to be agreeing with it. And it was, I don't know, a little bit of a shock that people liked it so much. I've had people commenting, messaging me, telling me that they're shown it in schools in Istanbul and things, and it's a bit surreal. It's a bit kind of mind blowing that people are enjoying it so much and that people are sharing it so much, and so it's a little bit overwhelming still, I think.
Have you had any media organizations contact you? I mean, the fact that you're getting educational responses is so wonderful, because if you think about it, without if you had made that decision not to submit yourself to the public, those schools would be showing something else now that may be far less relevant to the future of those children.
Yeah, no, I think I would have eventually have put it up on put it live. It was just a slight hesitation that I kind of had in the beginning, because I did expect a wave of just negativity for whatever reason. I think mostly because I've been talking about these ideas of resource-based economy and trying to get people to have an interest in the Zeitgeist movement and find out what they're doing. And although, I mean, you will get people that respond positively, it seems there's a lot of negativity on the internet, I find. And I just think people can sort of, I don't know, just sort of take your project apart, no matter what it is that you're saying. So I tried to put it in a way you'll notice I'm not too pushy on anything, really. I'm trying to be as sort of objective as possible in the film. Completely forgot where I was going with that.
You're going to say that that ameliorates the way people sort of react to the film, because I think, especially with things like YouTube, I mean, YouTube comments are really an example of where the human race fails. We are so awful on those things. I've had some incredible comments about myself on those as well. But all you have to do is remember that these people don't know you, and so it cannot be personal. It couldn't be personal.
Yeah.
If it is a personal sounding comment, it's more to do with how they are and not how you are. But I certainly think the general tone of your film, which is measured and calm and doesn't resort to emotional appeals, I think has hopefully, I would guess, produced some better reactions from people than if you'd been too pontificating about it. Definitely.
Yeah, actually, there's it's quite interesting. I've found a lot of people that otherwise would be against the Zeitgeist's material and materials. Sorry, the Zeitgeist's materials. I've had a few comments where they've said how much they disagree with the Zeitgeist for whatever reason, yet they still like the video, and they said, I'm conflicted here because I really like the video, I just don't agree with the ending, and they're still sharing the video. So, even if they disagree with the proposals of the Zeitgeist movement, by sharing the video, they might, it may end up in the hands of one of their friends who maybe doesn't have those presuppositions, so it's still sort of spreading that way, which is something I was quite surprised by.
Yes, that's very good. I think I've seen those comments, actually. There's a chap from an anarcho, either capitalist or primitivist position, who said that. And I must take my hat off to whoever that was, because I know what it's like to come across a video that you thoroughly disagree with, or that may incense you in some way, or whose conclusions you don't meet. But so to be able to go from that sort of position where you feel it's like an affront to your beliefs, which you believe are very well thought out, and you've always tried to cultivate them, to still offer that up to their group of friends and to the wider world as something that deserves attention is I think only a testament to the fact. I think you must have got the tone right.
Yeah, I hope so. I think it is because also, like, you know, I didn't start off with anything to do with Zeitgeist Movement, so they always have to watch the entire thing. And I mean, it still slightly kind of confuses me as to why they will then watch the whole thing, agree with the entirety of the film except the end, which, I mean, to a large degree, that's all we're really saying with the Zeitgeist Movement is this is the way it's going. There's so much that we're saying here that you have already agreed with by enjoying the film up until that point. But then, I mean, maybe they've got misconceptions about what the Zeitgeist Movement is and what a resource-based economy is. But it's good that we're getting them to watch up till that point at least.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and like we say, I mean, with these short attention spans that we have these days, you know, the fact that your film is over 2 hours long betrays not only that you have the concentration to do that, but also that other people have the concentration to watch that.
Yeah.
Good. Obviously, it must certainly be getting more important for people, you know. I wanted to ask you when you were looking through, because there were several discoveries, several things in your film which I didn't know anything about. What were the things that when you came across them, you thought they really blew you away? You said, "I can't believe we can do that. Isn't that amazing?" You know, those kinds of moments, those aha moments almost.
I think one of the main ones anyway was the MI1 milking units for the dairy farms. That was something I'd known quite a bit about automation, but I'd never heard of that. And just, you know, the way it uses these 3D cameras to identify the positioning for the udders. I mean, that's something that when you think of, like, if you were to see someone milking a cow, you think, okay, but how could a machine do that? And there, I mean, we have it, and it's incredible. It's that blew my mind quite a bit.
I tell you the one that really got me. The milking unit is amazing. There are two others that are very different levels of technical savvy, which just means so much in terms of their cultural influence if you were to really apply them. One is the REX system, WREX, which is a 3D printed structure that you put on the back of in this case, a little girl who didn't have the strength to lift her own arms because of, I think it was rotated shoulders and some other like medical condition. It meant that she just couldn't move her body that way. And these sort of almost elastic band built structures which fit around her arms allow her to move absolutely normally now. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, there's a similar video that's surfaced quite recently as well of a boy who they're reconstructing his hand and everything's made from a 3D printer as well. There was I got sent an article with the guy that has half his face removed, and they were able to sort of fill it in and do whatever with the advancements of 3D printing. And like the Regs, as far as I'm aware, these things have been around, but because of the materials used to build them, there's no way that you could put them on a child that small. And so that's the other thing about 3D printers. They're lightweight and all that stuff. And the fact that you're able to print on demand if one piece breaks, and you don't have to buy a whole new Rex. You can just print off that one piece. I mean, that in and of itself is quite incredible.
Absolutely, and it reminds me of that piece you included from the Dragon's Den, the UK show, where essentially inventors are pitted against investors, which is already a terrible idea. The idea, tell me why I should give you my money instead of, like, it's more like it's, you know, hoping for negativity basically. And there's that lady, I didn't know what it was that she designed, but one of the Duncan, I think, no, it's not Duncan Bannatyne, it's the other guy, the posh English chap, said, you know, it's almost like you've made a product that no one will buy more than once. I mean, you want it to break down, yeah. Which of course brings in the whole thing about cyclical consumption and planned obsolescence that of course we also talk about in the Zeitgeist Movement, because those are all part of the same problem. They're all a misapplication of technology for economic ends rather than human ends. It really struck me that when the Rex lady is talking about how if one piece broke, she would take a photo of it and email it to her doctor, and her doctor would know immediately which piece it was and just print another one and either send it in the post or deliver it to her another way. Which, also, I don't know if you found this, as you look into these things more and more, you find that the traditional arguments in economics, one of them being the division of labor, the fact you can't be great at everything, those start to dissolve when you see videos of a doctor who is not an engineer of any kind, or at least doesn't have industrial equipment at his hand's disposal, can in fact engage in precisely the kind of repairing and replacement and manufacture that would normally have been an independent medical company, a diagnostics company, that can create those things in a warehouse and a factory. All of that stuff's gone suddenly, and you just have direct point of care applications of technology in manufacturing as well as health. So I thought that was lovely. The other one that really struck me that I need to look into more is the idea of printing your own medicine. Do you want to describe this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little, I suppose, hard to describe. I'm obviously not a chemist, but so the guy, and his name escapes me now, he did a TED talk, and he's shown how you could essentially have a universal set of inks, and these would be chemical inks, and so you could program, you could program in almost any form of chemical structure. He goes on to speak about the end being a bit sort of speculative, saying it might end up one day with a matte fabricator. But the idea is so that you have these universal set of inks, and from these inks you can make other chemicals, and then make other chemicals and have those chemicals sort of bind together in molecules, and eventually you can download a sort of file that would be the equivalent of whatever medication you're on, and the printer reads that file and prints it off in your house, so you don't need to go to the pharmacy. And it's kind of strange, actually. That has all sorts of social implications, in the same way that these 3D printed guns, this is now a concern of people printing 3D guns, and of course, guns are banned, so what are we going to do when people can print them? Same thing of medicine. If we're trying to tell people they're not allowed to intake certain medicines, what are they going to do when people can kind of download whatever they want? And
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when you mentioned 3D printed guns, because my sister recently shared this story with me. They found the 3D printing gun factory quite recently.
A factory of
It was a factory that creates guns through 3D printing.
Wow.
And obviously it was shut down.
Yeah.
Then the argument becomes very interesting, because they say, like you just described it, people can 3D print guns, and guns are banned. Hence, it's bad, right? Which is such a truncated train of thought, isn't it? Because the question really should be, why would they use a 3D printer to print a gun? Why would they feel that they would have to do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's further evidence to the fact that we require a shift in values, and laws and things like that. They're just not as efficient as I think people think that they are.
That's right. And I mean, if you think about it, I mean, how many people own 3D printers at the moment? I would say it's only maybe a few 100,000 people worldwide. I'm not counting industry, but as in private home-owned sort of things like PrinterBot and RepRap and all the rest of it. And of course, why are they not printing guns? Why is not everybody printing a gun immediately, and then a really big gun? And then why are we already not seeing just vast amounts of violence from everybody who owns a 3D printer? Well, obviously they have some kind of set of values that doesn't require them to print a gun. They don't feel that they need it. And of course, on the other side, their sense of security, their sense of self-defense, doesn't also require or demand that you be an armed individual. It's not that people don't print guns because it's illegal. They don't print guns even when it's illegal, because of the values that are actually behind it. And illegality doesn't actually do anything apart from maybe instill a bit of fear. But we know, of course, that doesn't work, because people have been 3D printing guns anyway. So it's obviously something to do with something other than just simply the law. So yeah, those kinds of things are going to be interesting. Had you considered the other side of 3D printing molecules, this chemical process, whereby people can print their own poisons?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's the same type of abuse as someone printing more medicine than they need and things like that. You can't regulate these things anymore, I don't think. So I mean, I guess printing poison, it's a similar threat to the gun thing. We require a shift in values, and you're not going to be able to regulate it through laws. And you know, I think I heard something about they were going to sort of have the 3D printers have security software on it that if you were to download a gun, it wouldn't let you print it.
Yeah, I think you might have heard that from Federico Pistono when he was on Russia Today. He mentioned DRM being built into these things, but not quite for that reason, although it would be for that reason too. His point had more been about how commercial interests want to have DRM for replacement parts for their gadgets that they sell put in. Have you come across that?
No, I didn't hear the argument, but yeah, no, that's true. That's if you're going to have to be able to print replacement parts, then I guess essentially you'd have to be able to print the whole thing. My sort of argument against that was, well, even if you get a file and your printer doesn't let you print it because it recognizes that it's a gun, I don't know how rigid these things are. Like I don't see why someone couldn't go in and slightly modify the CAD file in order so that the printer doesn't recognize it as a gun printed that way.
Yeah, I had not thought about that at all. It's absolutely true. With the subtlety, the fact that there is more than one different type of gun design in the world. You know, you've got the Lugers, the revolvers, all the rest, and they all work in different ways. You would have to have such a broad spectrum of disallowed parts and shapes and interactions.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and even if you don't have that, which is already a phenomenal feat of AI, that kind of pattern recognition, I don't think it even exists really yet. Even if you had that, you're still going to have hackers who can still flood the market with printed guns once they crack it once, you know? And then if the file is updated, well, then they just crack it again and produce even more. So you are right. We always come back to the values argument, which I know it frustrates lots of people, doesn't it? But it's always comes back to the fact that we are going to have to accept that we have to behave better in a world of technological possibilities that mean all kinds of things for the possibilities of how we could behave.
I'll give you another bit of speculation. How about printing another printer that doesn't have that restriction on it as well?
Oh, I like that one. And of course, I mean, one thing that I picked up from your documentary that I really only discovered recently is the fact that we really can also start 3D printing circuit boards. I always thought there'd be a central part of this system that you would have to buy. You know, something that where the real housing is the real I don't know, the chips and all the, you know, those kinds of things, but rapidly becoming something that is just as printable as the outer sort of housing parts, isn't it?
Yeah, well, when I'd heard about the rep wrap and it was said to be able to print most of its own parts, I assumed the same, that it was almost everything except from the circuit boards. I wasn't sure. I mean, that was an assumption. So if you're able to print the circuit boards as well, then yeah, the actual parts needed then, I guess, is sort of minuscule.
I was also very taken by a 3D printing element, which means a huge amount, not only for employment, but also for the resources of the world. And it's it's contour crafting. It's the printing of houses within a day. I found that fascinating ever since it was explored briefly in Zeitgeist Moving Forward. But I mean, have you seen anything? What's the latest you've seen on that particular project? Because it's not something I'd looked up again recently. How far along are they? Do they have any real world examples of where they've 3D printed significant portions of houses or neighborhoods?
Last that I heard, there was a group, and I actually had this in the documentary, but I cut it out due to time constraints. I think they're approaching it like a sort of charitable thing, and they're trying to raise money to build houses with contour crafting in sort of third world countries and stuff. I'm not so sure about how far along it is in the mainstream. It's one of those things, though. That, I mean, the potential's there. It's a bit, again, it would put countless people out of work. So, I mean, you could speculate as to whether or not they're purposely restricting it. I don't know.
Could be. I mean, we're never going to be sure until it's too late how long we had a technology unimplemented before it was actually implemented. And then I suppose general governments and powers will hope that we don't do the reverse calculation and say, well, hang on, if we've had this technology for this long, how many lives have we lost through accidents on site? How many resources have we wasted? This was the second point I wanted to make about this. The idea that something like 40% of all of the resources that we use are for construction, and that contour crafting can vastly reduce the amount of building waste and mistakes and all the other stuff that we do. But also the fact that we're also again finding ourselves being able to concatenate several jobs into one overall job. This happened with the architectural sector, didn't it? Quite recently, I think in 2010. As partly a product of the crash that we'd been experiencing since 2008, and also partly because of the fact that technology had caught up at that point. People who were traditional CAD designers, which I think you know something about, it was now demanded that those skills of CAD, working with things like Maya and all that, was an implicit part of the architect's job, and that if you're designing a building, you should actually already be able to do all the 3D stuff that goes along with visualizing it. So then suddenly a whole submarket of job type was just vanished, or rather didn't vanish, has just been subsumed into another job. Add to that, if you were to really implement 3D printing of houses, the 3D layout of houses with incredibly strong results, without the need of so many builders and no CAD designers, and maybe just only the designer, like the architect, once. It's a vast implication it means for resources and production.
Yeah, there was a bit in the film actually about architects where I thought I was just being again speculative, saying if you could essentially have a program that works much like a Sims game, where you just build the house there and it's really easy. It's just a sort of drag and drop kind of thing. But one of my friends was telling me apparently there is software that does that to the effect of. It really is just like playing a Sims game, and that's it takes everything into consideration, and you can just build houses and structures very easily. If I'd known that at the time, I probably would have put it in the documentary as well.
Sure. There's an amusing side story to this. There was a really good article on Cracked recently. I don't know if you've ever come across that website. It does articles as lists, so it's like the 10 greatest thing of a thing, or the 10 moments. So things like the 5 conspiracy theories that turned out to be true, and all this, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
They had one which was the 8 most mind-boggling feats in video game history, and one of them, very near the top actually. I think it was one of the most amazing ones. Was a gentleman called Vincent Acassler, who is actually broadly has been a member of our movement, who designed the largest SimCity city ever. It was huge. I mean, the videos are brilliant for it, because you see he's copied up some of the notes he made on like graph paper, designing sections of a city so it can be tiled outwards in a way that's maximally efficient for the population and for general layout, so you can fit the most people into the least amount of space, and how often you need to tile industry and business and all this stuff. But the videos are presented in a really dark way, where at one point he says, like, he gives his cities really Lovecraftian names as well. Like they're sort of Greek words meaning the infinite city or something like that. And he says at one point, the inhabitants of this particular city, the meaning of their lives is absolutely absent. They're mindless drones who are trapped within the brilliantly designed city and never have requirement or will to leave. Obviously not trying to design a more utopian or cleaner city for the psychology, but it's you can see very much when you get to that level of size how you sort of tend to be quite domineering with a game. But it struck me when I watched that and when I saw this, and when I saw, in fact, you have at one moment a cutout, a short video of a very nice looking. I think it might have even been SimCity for the Mac. Is that right?
Possibly. I'm not sure what platform it would have been on. It was just a video I found, but yeah.
But it looks exactly like a video game, and I think there are a couple of other projects similar to this. It has always struck me as a massive need that we do use things like SimCity, or something more complex, obviously, to almost gamify construction and gamify a huge amount of sort of scientific interactions. There was a game that came out in 2008. I can't remember it now. Where you're essentially bending proteins because they're trying to map the proteome, the human proteome, rather than the genome.
That's familiar, yeah.
Yeah, and it was because AI wasn't clever enough to deal with, how you do put things together into a certain shape that's required, that they just designed an interface where you're doing that. So in the background, you're actually manipulating data in a way that's very advanced. But in the foreground, what you're doing is really moving two sort of bendy spirals together and fitting them together. And you end up producing, really skilled scientific research out of a game.
That's interesting to think about where the sort of general public might go in terms of creating their own things with video games. I sort of make the argument, well, not really an argument, it is again just a bit of speculation that, as computers grew throughout the 90s, like necessity demanded that we familiarize ourselves, and I mean, back when they were only out for a few years, no one really knew how to use email, and no one knew what a website was and all this stuff. But now you ask anyone, everyone knows. And so with the advancements of 3D printers, people will start to customize their own things, and they'll get very familiar with things like CAD files and designing their own things. And that was another sort of just thing to postulate about the architecture as well. Possibly we'll all become competent architects in that way.
I think that's true. And at the same time, we'll of course see the material improvements and the structural improvements in housing and cars, and and also of course again we come back to the safety of cars and things like that, meaning that we don't trash so much of our resources so much by having these sort of accidents and destruction of property in that way. So yeah, the average Joe will be able to design a house that's structurally way more has way more integrity than anything that an architect was able to do with the existing materials when they were still individual job market sort of representatives. So, I mean, I'll give you an example of where it could really be needed. You may have even thought of this yourself. The huge disaster in the Philippines at the moment, after that giant storm that's just destroyed everything. It's nothing but a waste of broken wood now, isn't it? Wouldn't that be an ideal place to turn up with a contour crafting company and just blitz the area with really strong, reinforced, very quick to put up buildings to really ameliorate the situation?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to see it. If people were to get together and do that, I think the rest of the world would kind of wake up and say, well, if this is possible here in a disaster area, why are we not implementing it elsewhere?
Absolutely, where we don't have the immediate problem of the aftermath of a disaster like that. Have you? Sorry, I did ask you before, but then I truncated my own question. Have you had any interest from the media with this video yet, or has it been just sort of educational?
No, nothing yet. I was contacted by one group that they wanted to show it at some sort of film festival thing, but because of the audio in some parts, the audio is too loud in some of the parts. So I'm trying to now get the audio files to send to them so they can sort of fix those parts, and then it might be getting shown at this festival. But yeah, so still just kind of working away on things like that.
That'd be excellent. Yeah, don't make the mistake that Peter Joseph made and make sure you clear the materials first before you do it. Unless I suppose if it's free, if it's a free film festival, you have no problems under the Fair Use Act.
As far as I know, it's a free one, yeah.
Well, it's been really nice talking to you, and thank you for making the film, man. Thank you for making something that really, I think, is now the go-to guide for anybody on any level of the argument of technological unemployment. If you're hearing this now and you have no idea what that means, I would just recommend you punch up "Will Work for Free." It's on YouTube, right, Sam? Have you put it anywhere else?
Not at the moment, no, just YouTube. I'm working on putting it into parts as well. So yeah.
And you already have it transcribed, I noticed, because I suppose you started with the Word document. Was that transcription just basically you just pasting the words in?
Yeah, pretty much. So I had to go back and sort of transcribe the bits where I wasn't speaking and things like that. But again, like I said, I had no idea that people would even notice this film. So so I didn't. I really it wasn't on the top of my priority list. But it's up now. The transcript's up there, so you can translate it through YouTube into multiple languages.
Fantastic. And has this spurred you on to wanting to make any other films?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was kind of during the production of this, when it was nearing the end. I sort of did start speculating about whether or not to do a similar kind of thing and focus solely on human behavior. And but I'm not really sure if I'm going to do that. That's kind of just up in the air at the moment. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not really sure where I'm going to go.
Sure. Well, keep us up to date with what you do next, man, Sam. So, but thank you very much, and we'll provide a link to the video in the description of the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Ben.
My thanks to Sam for taking the time to talk to me. It was very nice of him. I do recommend the film. It ends with an all-out call to join the Zeitgeist Movement as a means for bringing about a possible world in which labour is predominantly, almost exclusively done by machines to take care of the basic needs of everybody on this planet. We'll be back in a week or two with the next installment of our podcast to update you with the latest moves from the movement, the latest projects we have going, and the latest bits of media that have caught our attention over that time. Until then, thanks for listening, have a great evening, and have a great life.